I'm glad that worked. I bought this one a couple days ago, so I'd have a new one to work. We have an older one in the house that does that. And last night for worship, not only did the power go out for a couple of seconds and we were in darkness, but I had done everything ahead of time, then I opened it up, nothing from the worship. So have you ever had an aha surprise moment? If so, you may have had what we call an epiphany, something unexpected or surprise that you realize this truth, this reality that you didn't think was quite that way. Sometimes we call that an epiphany. Who here has ever had an epiphany about something? Most of us have, yeah. When we look at it more literally with Scripture, we look at it as being a manifestation or a revelation. And particularly, usually it is a pointing towards that light of God and specifically that light of Christ. And when we think about the wise men too, and we look at the stars, we think about that very star that guided them, that came across the sky and led them. But where did it lead them to? The point where Jesus was born, right? So this epiphany light is the light that leads us to Christ. That's a main part about that light. And as we heard in the children's message too, it's not just for a star way back then. God's manifestation and God's light is with us here too. As a matter of fact, speaking of light, when you look in the sanctuary, there's been kind of epiphany for, where's Bill Hetherington? I know he's here. Where's Bill? There he is. Bill Hetherington and I had kind of an epiphany too, and for the Capitol campaign, here is part of what's happened too. LED lights in the sanctuary. Now here's part of the epiphany with it. If you look and see the big round ones, there's 4 of those. Each one of those with the incandescent bulbs were 500 watts. So just those 4 lights were 2,000 watts. If you look at all the lighting around the edge, if you look at all the individual lights in each of these and everything else in the whole sanctuary, now that we've gone LED, maybe barely about up to 1,000 watts total for the whole room. The same or less than just 2 of these had been. That's an epiphany. That's a wow. And for us, for our homes too, to think about, if we actually spend, and so now that we spent the money up front, but they're reasonable, they're affordable, if it's not even quite, maybe barely 10% of what it cost before, it's only about 10% of the energy, that's amazing, as long as they last. And they're supposed to last much, much longer. That also saves in labor too, going back and forth to replace bulbs as well as the expense to get more bulbs. But what about for us and for our homes and everywhere else? Ways to be stewards. But that's just one way as we're thinking about light today. I just wanted to share that in this Epiphany Day. And as you come back to the sanctuary time and again, and you'll notice too, we used to have the more conical shape to the lights, the way the stream of light would come down and be bright one place and we'd have shadows. But if you look around even on the floor, most of the places now are just nice, even light. And so if you feel just a little more spring in your step or coming light to the sanctuary, part of it is literal with our LED lights too. So there's one little epiphany. A second one too is with the wise men themselves. How many wise men were there again? 3. Really? Does everybody agree on that? Actually, in the hymn coming afterwards, I think we're going to sing 2 different times about the 3 wise men. But in Scripture, it doesn't say. There's another little epiphany. It was that story that we know so well, and the tradition's always been 3 wise men. And why do you think that so many people think there's 3 wise men? Why not 5? Yes, because of 3 gifts. But see, we have assumed, that's 1 gift per person. But what if 1 wise guy had frankincense and myrrh? Or what if 5 wise guys brought gold? We don't know. We just assumed it's 1 per person to make 3 people for wise men. And there's even been all these traditions and what their names are too and all that. We talked about a little bit of that last year. But we don't know. People like filling in the blanks. It's not a little aha. It's a whole different thing about the story. We don't know. And it doesn't really matter for that part of the story that reminds us what does matter. And it points back to the star, to the light, and where that light was pointing, to Jesus the Christ. That's our aha epiphany. Not about the details of the wise men or how many there were, their names, but the name of this one, Jesus, to whom all these stars really point. That's another epiphany for us today. All this light of God pointing toward the light of God's Son, Jesus Christ, for us and with us. I had a major life epiphany when I was a young adult. I don't know how long I was out of the house. My mom's here today too. She's going to help take care of the kids when we're in Israel, and then my in-laws come in about a week later. Mom, I don't know how long it was after I'd left the house, but I had this incredible epiphany. And I realized as I was living my own, I can eat breakfast any time of the day I want. And as many times as I want too. That was like a life changer. And Lauren and Brandon will attest now. Even when I make French toast to this day, I use like 9 or 10 eggs, right? And I use like a loaf and a half or 2 loaves of bread. Because if we make French toast for lunch and it's that much, I've already got plans for dinner. And if I'm not too greedy a pig, I might even have breakfast on top of that set too. All the more French toast. So this was like this life changer. And then we hear about this stuff called dark chocolate that's supposed to be good for you. What? So every time I eat dark chocolate, now I'm not sure if I really believe it, but I'm going with it as far as I keep telling it. So I'm like, yeah, this is good for me. Maybe I should have another one because it's good for me, right? Lauren, you're into that, right? And then there are other things too, surprises for us, aha kind of things. Kosher food. You think about the Jewish traditions from all these, starting thousands of years ago, with all this preparation of food that we thought about as being just all these rules and orders. You can't eat this, you can't eat that. It'll be this way, it has to be prepared that way. And we realize, and even now in 2020, people are realizing that so many things about kosher preparation and choices of food are healthy. And even in today's day and age are healthy. Imagine with food preparation and choice and sterility back then, the alternatives they had and how incredibly healthy kosher cooking and preparation would have been. Then you had this aha that, wow, it wasn't just the spiritual instructions or orders, but it was for the well-being and health, even the physical health of the people of God. And that's why. And then you look and you hear things like, well, alcohol is bad for you, and especially if somebody struggles with alcoholism, it's a very powerful, awful, terrible disease. It's so hard to battle. And there's so many, bad types of the hard liquor, drinking too much beer, all these things. And then here you have Jesus at this dinner, at this supper, holding up this cup, saying, "This cup is a new covenant in my blood, shed for you and for all people for the forgiveness of sins." And the liquid in that cup is red wine, which they're saying today is good for us and healthy for your heart. The one form of alcohol that we have discovered, in these last, 30 or so years when they first started talking about this as a possibility, is the very form that Jesus had held up in a spiritual way that we realize today is also in a physical, healthy way. At least as long as they keep saying that. We don't know, it could go the way of dark chocolate too in the future, as I'm worried about. But as right now, they still most say this can be healthy for your heart. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that an aha? The very thing we looked at as being this spiritual well-being is also good for our bodies, this very gift from God. That's an epiphany when we see and have these things. Well, I also had an epiphany the day that our dog died. Her name was Autumn, and she was a chocolate lab, and she was with us for 14 years. We loved her so much, and she loved us dearly. We had her since she was a little puppy. She had renal failure at the end, and we still stayed with her through all of that too until it just couldn't go anymore. When she died, I was just blubbering. I was just, full of tears and grieving. And it was interesting. The epiphany to me was the only thoughts that came to mind for me. It wasn't that I wish I could do this with her or that with her, or she would, or how I would miss this or that. All I could think of was that I wanted to love her more. I wanted to give more. I was thinking of all the times that we'd romp, and I'd take her off a leash and she would jump up like this, almost like a deer looking for squirrels or birds, and then I would jump up with her and we'd run around, and I wish I'd done it more. I wish I'd given more of that to her. I wish I could have given her more joy and more love. I know she loved us very dearly, and we did to her too, but I didn't have any of those self-thoughts like, well, I wish I could have this or I'll miss that. It was just wishing that I could give more to this beautiful spirit presence, this first child of ours in our family that had loved us so much. I don't think that was really just me with my stuff because I'm not that good. I want for me my own stuff. I want to take a nap, maybe a little later this afternoon if I could before going to the airport. I want to go fishing. I haven't been fishing in a while. There's all these things I want on my own. But sometimes in our lives, this light just emanates from deep within. And the amazing thing about it is that so much greater than any and all of our surface wants combined, it's more filling and more full and more a part really of who we are. I didn't even have a need for any kind of wants for myself then. I just wanted to love and give. And I think that's that epiphany revealing light of Christ within us that does that. I think when I think of Lauren and Brandon too, I remember, I don't know if it was around 2013 or so, but it was when I was a stay-at-home dad for a while again, and I had the coaching company on the side, swim coaching and some life coaching too. But I was with them most of the time, most days, and doing things. And this particular day, I was just sick as a dog. I remember it was in the family room, and I was just flat down on my back, and I was just laying on the floor, and I didn't even want to lift an arm up at all because I think I had about maybe 104 fever, and everything was just achy all over. And see, I'd been training too at that point. I was doing master swimming, and I was training probably either for the Pan American Games or for World Championships. Now, before you think too much of that, though, this is not the Michael Phelps version. This is the adult age group version, master swimming, old man's version. But there's still a few thousand people that go to the Masters Pan American Games, and even a few thousand more master swimmers from all over the world that go to World Championships. So it's still a pretty cool thing. But I didn't think at all about, well, how will I be in shape for that or anything else? It just didn't even matter. I was just laying on the floor, and I couldn't be a dad the way I wanted to be able to be a dad to Lauren and Brandon. I wanted to be able to give to them and be with them, and I couldn't. And just looking back and seeing that, you may say, well, those were hard times. You were sick one time. The other time is when your dog died, and that seems pretty tough. But looking back on that, part of the aha is that was also when I was most whole and full, because that deep part of that light of Christ within me was coming out, more fully. And some of the junk and stuff, the sinful stuff, the selfish stuff was just totally set aside. And I was more present, more having a sense of resonance with where I was and who I was as a child of God than any other times. And I believe that we all have that light within us because each of us is a child of God. And because we are a child of God, and because the light of Christ is here and it is a light that no darkness can overcome, there is that light within us too. And if you notice, the examples I used weren't about, when I was a pastor doing all this. No, it's a dog and my kids, just like any of the rest of us. So if you think and wonder, well, Pastor, that's a really nice story, but I don't know if it really is about me. I don't know if I have that kind of light in me. This kind of light doesn't come from us. It's not something that we create or work to achieve. It's something that's from God, that's innate with us, from being children of God. It's something that we heard about and believed in faith that day we were baptized. When we were baptized, we were crucified also with Christ, died and raised to new life with Him. And we received the candle, and that candle was lit from the Christ candle. And we hear the words, "Let your light so shine before others that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." As a gift to us, that light is within us too. So when I say, which I'll be doing at the end of the sermon, arise, shine, for your light has come. You might think, well, that's a nice thing for you to say, Pastor, but that's not really me. I haven't done so great in my life, Remember, this is not about you. It is not about the work that you have done. This is about Christ living in you. This is about that light that's different than just the light that went across. And actually, maybe it's the same, because both were signs from God. We don't have to have this external sign in the heavens to know that God is with us. The reality is we also have that very light, and that very light is shining within us. It is the light of Christ. Sometimes it's just hard to get it out, just like this is hard to open, but there it is. There it is. So in our prayers, may we be open this new year, this Epiphany. May we pray to be open in our hearts, open in our minds, to where God would have us go, to how God would have us love, to how God would have us shine. Because the reality of feeling that is so much better than any of our wants and desires. So may we pray for an openness here to get beyond all of those and to let ourselves be a vessel to have that light shine. So when I say this, I don't just mean it for the prophet who is talking about the coming of Jesus, which that's true. And we know, yeah, you're right. You might say, well, Pastor, that was really about Isaiah. It was really about the Isaiah text, and the Isaiah text was pointing to Jesus, and they even included frankincense and myrrh. We saw it on the screen. That's about Jesus, not us. You know what I would say about that? I'd say, you're right. It was about Jesus, not about you or me. And yet, the same Jesus who came is the light of the world. The same Jesus who came does live with us and in us. So in a very real and honest way, because we are children of God, and because of Christ's light in us, this text today in Isaiah really is about us too, and a gift for us too. So for each of us here, for how we are in our church this new year, and in our families for this new year, in our jobs, in our lives, and with our very hearts, with who and whose we are, may we all receive and live this good news. Arise and shine, for your light has come. Amen.